Identity, 2003, horror, thriller, slasher-ish movie. And, the way I chose to roll in the new year on the channel, Maniac Movies.
There was a storm.
It was an accident. We had an accident.
And we got stuck, and we couldn't get out. We couldn't get out because of the storm.
So I'm trying to get better about this, so like, share, subscribe. I'm not on social media currently, so basically the only way I have of growing the channel is either through random YouTube searches or people showing it to other people. So if you liked it, show it around. You may notice I bought a new light because it was so dim in here and it was killing my picture quality and it was driving me crazy, so I finally just had to break down and buy a new light. Anyway, Identity. Now, Identity is a horror movie. Like, it is. It's the kind of movie that you know the people involved in it would go, it's a thriller in the vein of Alfred Hitchcock. No, it's a horror movie. This basically is a slasher. It is. But it was a slasher made during that era of What a Twist. If you remember that meme from Robot Chicken. And it's from M. Night Shyamalan, because The Sixth Sense really heavily informed the 2000s as far as what studio thriller horror movies would do, and it was that all of them had to have a giant twist at the end. And it's actually kind of racist as hell, because M. Night Shyamalan doesn't actually have an accent, so that whole "what a twist," he sounds, I'm pretty sure he was raised in America, if he wasn't just born in America. But anyway, Identity is a movie that you can kind of tell from a mile away is going to have a big twist ending, and if you watch the movie, I don't know if you'll see it coming or not, because it's been. I remember kind of figuring it out and talking to other people, and some were blown away, and some were like, "Yeah, I saw that coming." So, whatever. It's a good movie, regardless of whether or not you see the twist coming. But it is. I mean, it's a riff on Ten Little Indians, the classic Agatha Christie story, where you have a group of people that are connected in a way that none of them understand, and they start getting picked off one by one. They don't know why they're getting picked off. They just know that they are being targeted. So, in this particular movie, we have, what is it? A bunch of characters, honestly. So, a limo driver played by John Cusack, a cop played by Ray Liotta, his convict played by Jake Busey, a prostitute played by Amanda Peet, a failing TV star played by Rebecca De Mornay, a recently married couple played by William Lee Scott and Clea Duvall, and then a family played by John C. McGinley. I don't know the wife's name; she's barely in it. And the kid played by Brett Lower. And they all stop at this motel, and it's during a rainstorm, so they're all stranded. The roads are washed out; they can't go anywhere. And there's been an accident, and the hotel is run by John Hawkes. So they can't go anywhere, and then bad things start to happen. Let's say they start getting picked off, like people are just getting murdered left and right. And this is all done with a framing narrative of Alfred Molina, who is most famous probably for playing Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2, and do as a psychiatrist who's trying to get kind of leniency for this inmate played by Pruitt Taylor Vince, the fat guy. He's done a lot of stuff. I probably know him best as Kevin Bacon's brother in the kidnap thriller Trapped with Charlize Theron, where Kevin Bacon kidnaps Dakota Fanning, Charlize Theron's kid, and Natural Born Killers. He was just one of the guards taken hostage by Woody Harrelson. Anyway, so you don't know how this therapist who's defending this convicted murderer ties into this group of people. Like, is this maybe a flash forward? Is he the killer? Is this, like, we don't know yet. So, first off, if you're going to watch Identity, I strongly suggest that you watch it without watching the trailer that's playing behind me, because the trailer is very spoiler heavy. So don't watch the trailer, just watch the movie. But, and there's two versions of the movie on the DVD. You can watch the original movie or the movie with an extended ending. The extended ending is nothing, and it honestly almost complicates things, so I'd kind of recommend against it unless you're a mega fan, in which case, fine. But this is a solid movie. Now, what I remember best about Identity is that when I was in school, and I would tell people, oh, I really like horror movies, what they would say is, oh, did you like Identity? And it was kind of like telling people, oh, I really like heavy metal. Oh, do you like Linkin Park? It was kind of like mainstream enough that most people had heard of it and they felt comfortable admitting that they liked it. It wasn't like saying, oh, I like Saw, or I like Hostel, or I like House of a Thousand Corpses. It was like, I like Identity. It has movie stars. It's directed by it was a big studio release. And a big part of that is the reason that the kills are almost all off-screen. Now, I know horror fans tend to say off-screen deaths are lame, but for the purposes of this movie, it's really necessary, because this is a whodunit, and short of doing POV, which could have worked, the kills have to be off screen because you would have known who the killer was if you were seeing them. There's just no way. And this is directed by James Mangold. Now, James Mangold is a fascinating director. He's extremely talented, and he knows no genre. So most directors work within the same basic genre all the time. You have directors who specialize in comedy, who specialize in action, who specialize in horror, who specialize in drama. And they may, edge into something different. But like Quentin Tarantino, most of his movies are essentially action movies. Martin Scorsese, most of his movies are essentially character-driven dramas. Even if they are crime dramas, they're still essentially character-driven dramas. Um, Mary Harron's stuff is a little bit harder. Spike Lee's stuff are usually social commentary dramas. Anyway, so most directors, they have a consistent tone, but James Mangold just does whatever. Like in the 90s, he made one of my favorite crime movies in the 1990s, Copland, a very underappreciated movie starring Sylvester Stallone and Ray Liotta. And then he did like a rom-com with Hugh Jackman and Meg Ryan called Kate and Leopold. He did Identity, which is a straight-up horror movie. And immediately after Identity, he did Walk the Line, the biopic on Johnny Cash. Jimmy Cash. I'm an idiot. Johnny Cash, the biopic, and it's kind of funny because they even quote lines from a Johnny Cash song in this movie, and then the director went and directed a Johnny Cash biopic with Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon. So yeah, then most recently he directed Logan, which is honestly one of the best superhero movies of the last 10 years, like easily. And I don't even like superhero movies, so Logan is a very solid movie. And he directed the Ford versus Ferrari movie, which again, I don't care about race cars. I've never been a NASCAR guy, and that's still a good movie. He is a phenomenal director. He's very unique in that he just jumps into whatever. I feel like doing a horror movie this year. Like he seemingly can do anything. And his next project is supposedly going to be an Indiana Jones movie. I don't know if they're ever going to get that off the ground because of Harrison Ford's age, but we'll see. If anyone can do it, he can do it. And he does a very good job with Identity. Identity is a very suspenseful, interesting movie. It uses rain very well. Rain can be, the dark, stormy night motif. It can be a horror movie's best friend. Even going back to the original Friday the 13th, a rainy night is just naturally suspenseful. You've got constant noise, the weather is working against you. And that can be very cool for this kind of story because you've already got a threat. You've already got the weather. And like I said, this whole movie hinges upon the fact that they are stranded at a hotel. They can't leave. The roads are flooded. So what are they going to do? They sit in their car in the rain and hope that the flooding doesn't get any worse. They go to this rat hole hotel run by John Hawkes. John Hawkes is an interesting actor in his own right. He's a character actor. I will never be able to think of him as anything but Pete Bottoms, the nervous liquor store clerk in From Dusk Till Dawn that was held hostage by George Clooney. He talks. That is the fastest talking you will ever see in a movie. Like, forget Chris Tucker, forget Chris Rock, forget Eddie Murphy. John Hawkes from Dusk Till Dawn talks so fast, and it's hilarious. But he's had a lot of success. He got a couple Oscar nominations for Winter's Bone, that movie with Jennifer Lawrence, or I forget the name of it. The one where he had the sex surrogate and he was dying with Helen Hunt. He was on Deadwood. He was the right-hand man of the sheriff in Deadwood. He was in that 7 billboards outside of I can never remember that. This is the most cumbersome, ridiculous title. That thing where Frances McDormand put up a bunch of billboards because her kid got killed and no one was caught, and had Woody Harrelson and Sam Rockwell won an Oscar for it. So John Hawkes has had a long career, and this was kind of him in a transitional period when he was getting away from smaller parts and into bigger parts. So he's good in the movie, and it all hinges on this incident where John Cusack is a former cop turned limo driver, accidentally runs over a woman. Now, it's not really his fault because the woman kind of steps back into traffic unknowingly. But he hits this woman who's the mother of this family with John C. McGinley from Scrubs, the asshole doctor. And he plays this very nervous, weird guy. John C. McGinley is always nervous. It's just whether he's a nervous asshole or a nervous nice guy. And this one, he's a nervous nice guy. So they have to get her to the nearest building, and they take her to the hotel. And along the way, there's some other stragglers, including the cop and his convict. And that's Liotta and Jake Busey. Jake Busey is an actor that I liked in the 90s and early 2000s when he was doing stuff like The Frighteners. He's a fantastic villain in Peter Jackson's The Frighteners. Got me a score of 12, beat that. He was really cool in that movie, Starship Trooper, where he's the best friend. But after Identity, he sort of started seeming like he was baked off his ass in everything he did. And I know California has basically legalized pot, but dude, lay off the weed when you're acting, because he plays every role the exact same now. Like he was on the From Dusk Till Dawn TV series as Sex Machine because Jake Busey looks a lot like Tom Savini, but just always talks like this. Like no matter what role he's playing, he just kind of talks like this. You know, he's stoned off his ass. So you got the cop and the criminal. You got the prostitute played by Amanda Peet. You got all these people in this one location, and then people start dying. So it is purely a whodunit, and more than that, it's a whydunit. It's like, why are we here? How did this happen? You know, the natural suspect is obviously Jake Busey. He's the convict, and he's very evil. Like he's just walking around with his hair down over his eyes, like just mean mugging at everybody. But you know, Ray Liotta as the cop is like, and I love Ray Liotta. Ray Liotta, of course, from Goodfellas, Narc, Smoking Aces, Hannibal. He's a great intense actor, so you kind of naturally are a little nervous around him just because he usually plays a villain, and he's playing this role kind of like a bad guy. He's a guy who just starts screaming like, "What did you fucking do?" Like he just goes off on everybody. And John Cusack is sort of the calm center at this, with Amanda Peet as his kind of right hand. They're kind of the calm center of all these very eccentric and easily upset characters. All these people are just freaked out constantly, especially the newlyweds. They are just straight up screaming at each other. The played by William Lee Scott, who is probably most famous for playing the dickhead brother in that Ashton Kutcher movie, The Butterfly Effect, and Clea Duvall, who I love. I love Clea Duvall. And she was on Veep with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, which I didn't know until I started doing research on her. But she was also in the faculty that Invasion of the Body Snatchers in a high school where she played the badass goth girl. And one of my favorite TV shows, Carnival, she was on that. So they're just screaming at each other. The dad is all nervous. Everyone is just constantly freaked out. John Hawkes obviously is trying to hide something because he doesn't want anyone to see anything in his place. He's like turning down pictures and hiding files. So this is a movie where everyone is obviously hiding a secret, and you're just kind of like counting off your fingers, like, okay, it might be this person, it's probably not this person. I think this person's gonna die next. Yeah, and it's fun. It's a fun little whodunit. There's not a lot more to it than that, but it's still a cool movie. So, as far as what I don't like about this movie, there's really two things, and one is just that it's very thin. It's like 90 minutes. It's very short. The characters are very like, this guy is angry all the time. This guy is nervous all the time. This girl is really easily upset. You know, it's just very basic. But you know, that's not necessarily a huge mark on it. But because this is it's so basic, it doesn't really stick with you afterwards. Like that was a fun ride, but I'm fine. It doesn't really scare you into all that intensely. It doesn't really challenge you. It's just a mystery. That's all it is. That's all it aspires to be. So that's fine, but it keeps it from kind of getting into that like level of true classic. And the other thing I don't like about this movie is John Cusack. Sorry. John Cusack has had this long career and been pretty successful. Like he started in the '80s with a couple of cult hits, "Say Anything," the romantic dramedy where he's holding the boombox up over his head outside the girl's house because he's trying to get her to go out with him. I never even saw it, and I know that image. That was just such a classic image. And Better Off Dead, which is really a pretty standard '80s teen comedy, except that he keeps trying to kill himself throughout the whole movie, which is honestly sort of a funny running gag. And you get into the '90s, and you had like Grosse Point Blank, where he's the hitman who goes to his high school reunion, or High Fidelity. Then he kept going in the 2000s. He had 2012, which was this big budget movie with Amanda Peet. And, he's just kind of floated around since then. Lately, he's become one of those Twitter warriors that everyone hates, where he just constantly complains about on Twitter about everything. But whatever. I like him in some stuff and not in others. And the one thing I think he probably fails hardest at is playing a traditional leading man. He can be funny, he can be a smartass, he can be weird, he can be, like in 1408, the Stephen King haunted a hotel thing. He was good in that as this kind of asshole paranormal debunker. But the thing he can't pull off, and I've never seen him pull off well, is a traditional leading man hero type role. And that's what he is in this. I just don't buy him as this cynical ex-cop hero. And because of that, the whole movie kind of is always a little shaky for me because I'm not connecting with the leading actor at all. I just don't buy him in the role. Now I like Ray Liotta a lot in the movie. I like Amanda Peet a lot in the movie. Amanda Peet, who was kind of an it girl at the time, she never quite got her career off the ground, but she's worked steadily. She broke through with that Bruce Willis comedy where the hitman moves in next door to the nervous guy, the whole 9 yards. And since then, she's just worked steadily. She's never been a star, but she's always gotten work. And I like her in this. Um, so yeah, that hurts it a little bit. But aside from that, I do like this movie. The twist works for me. It's complicated, and you could argue it devalues the whole movie, but at the same time, it is interesting, the idea of it. So from here on out, I'm probably going to be in deep spoilers. This is a good, solid R-rated thriller, horror, mystery type deal. And if you're curious about the previous works of the guy who directed Logan, the guy who directed Ford v Ferrari, this is definitely one you should check out because it's a cool little thriller. It doesn't go too far that it's going to turn off people who don't really like horror. Like I said, it's a good middle of the ground movie. I like it. So heavy spoilers from here on out. Oh, and one funny thing is that this is written by the guy who wrote the Jack Frost movies. Jack Frost, you know, the evil killer snowman that was also a sexual predator. Those movies are hilariously bad. There's two of them. So it's amazing to think that the writer of Jack Frost wrote this movie. But anyway, so the whole flick hinges on this one idea. And like I said, heavy spoilers. This is just my thoughts on the movie. That Pruitt Taylor Vince's character, the patient, the guy who's in the who's being interrogated by a therapist played by Alfred Molina, he's got split personality disorder, and all of the characters at the hotel are parts of his different personalities. The prostitute, the family man, the ex-cop, the convict, the badass sociopath, the nervous hotel owner that was a gambling addict. Now, all these are just elements of him, the newlyweds. And while, like with most split personality movies, if you really stop and dissect it, you're like, wait a minute. So is the newlyweds? Is he both of them? Is he arguing with himself? Is he one, or is he like? Is the family? Is he just the dad, or is he like? Is he just the son? I guess he would have to just be the son if he was any of them. But it's schizophrenia is a complicated medical condition that some psychiatrists, even to this day, don't believe is a legitimate diagnosis. They think that it's actually just a symptom of other mental illnesses. Schizophrenia was very uncommon. It was basically unheard of until the 1950s, and at which point a book was published and it suddenly skyrocketed. So were people able to acknowledge it because the book had been published so they could now see what it was, or were people just emulating the symptoms because the book had been very popular? Schizophrenia is an iffy one. Like in that movie adaptation with Nicolas Cage, where his brother is pitching pitching a movie where it stars a cop chasing a serial killer who has a woman held hostage, and it turns out all three of them are the same personality, and the first thing he says is, so wait, he has himself tied up in a basement? Yeah, like, schizophrenia is a kind of a movie trope, but this movie handles it pretty well because this is all occurring in Pruitt Taylor Vince's head. So you can argue, no matter what, this is just an elaborate fantasy they're trying to break this guy out of. And this guy is a multiple murderer. Like I said, in the extended version of the DVD, you actually get to see his crimes, where he went to this hotel and murdered a bunch of people. And it's kind of fun to imagine that what's happening at the hotel in the movie is sort of similar to what was happening at the hotel where he committed his actual crimes. But the movie doesn't go that far with it. Like I said, it doesn't really make a difference whether you watch the theatrical cut or the extended cut. So, basically, as people are getting picked off, you kind of start to, like, in my opinion, with a mystery, a lot of times is all you have to do is think about who's the least likely suspect, and they're probably the killer. And in this movie, the least likely suspect is the kid, and it's the kid. So, Brett Lower is the killer, the little boy is the killer. And that actually does explain that scene where Clea Duvall's locked in the bathroom with that tiny little wimpy-ass lock on the door. And the killer can't, but it's like, man, I could push that like this. That would be all it would take. Just, door would break open. But it's a kid. He can't knock the door down. And it's kind of hilarious to imagine that. So, it's alright as a twist. Like I said, it's kind of a double twist in that, oh, the kid's the killer. And they're all personalities in their own mind. So you get the kind of fake-out ending at the end. Oh, another interesting thing is that when Amanda Peet, as the prostitute, robs that guy at the beginning, she was supposed to kill him. That guy was actually supposed to be one of the personalities in Pruitt Taylor Vince's head, and that was supposed to be the first one that they eliminated, and they cut that scene, supposedly for pacing. They cut that scene so you would still be aligned with Amanda Peet's character, so you would still think of her as a good character. But anyway, so At the end of the movie, all the personalities are supposedly dead. Amanda Peet's gonna get her dream life running an orange farm. All right, whatever. Everyone has their dreams, I guess. And then the kid comes back and wastes her, and then it turns out Pruitt Taylor Vince is still dangerous, and he takes the people out of the ambulance. So it's a cool little down ending. It's a dark ending, and he keeps telling that it ends with him telling that poem. That I looked up the stairs, saw a man who wasn't there. He didn't make up that poem. That poem pre-existed this movie, so he's lying. But he's a killer, so he's allowed to lie. Yeah. I generally like this movie a lot. I think it's a cool, solid little horror flick. I love the part where, like Jake Busey's death, where he gets the baseball bat shoved down his throat. I'm not real sure how the kid did that, but yeah. Rebecca De Mornay getting her head chopped off and shoved into a washing machine is a nice little kill. It's all around a solid little movie. It's not quite great, but it's very good. It holds out very well. It doesn't feel particularly dated. It's kind of cool how they shot this thing. This movie was shot more or less entirely on a soundstage. The motel, this is not a standing location. This was all done on a soundstage. Constant water pouring down on everybody, and apparently, like, the soundstage started to mildew because there was so much water in it. Everyone started getting sick, and people who would come to visit the set would be like, "My God, how you stand the smell?" Because it was just constant rain. And I mean, this movie probably has as much rain as any movie I can think of, except for maybe the original The Crow. Like, it is just raining through this whole flick. Yeah, it's cool. It's a good little movie. I like it, and I like Ray Liotta in it especially. This is a classic Ray Liotta role. Like Ray Liotta in his prime was a great volatile badass. He was a lot of fun to watch playing these kind of parts. Whether you're talking about Narc, Hannibal, Copland, Phoenix was a great underappreciated one. What else was he in? A No Escape is another good one that doesn't get talked about enough. Obviously, Goodfellas is kind of the one he's remembered for. He's kind of fallen off a bit now. He kind of went from being like the badass gangster to the scary homeless guy, like in the way he looks and the way he plays, and supposedly he's had major substance abuse issues. But I enjoy him a lot in this movie. So all around, it's a good flick. I think once you get to the revelation about the birthdays, oh, it's all our birthdays. It's like, yeah, this is supernatural. There's no way this is really happening. Like from that moment on, you know. But it's a cool little flick. And yeah, that's about all I got. So my next video updates Wednesday and Friday. My next video is going to be on the viral horror hit Megan is Missing. I haven't seen that movie since it first came out. I'm kind of curious if it holds up or not. A lot of people have been talking about it lately. I was like, I'm curious. I saw it in 2011 when it was released. I'm going to rewatch it. I'm going to do a video on that. So it's coming up Friday. Megan is Missing. That's all I got.